Hello, my name is Courtney Hall, and in this presentation I'm going to talk about my design for a voice deactivated smoke alarm. I will talk a little bit about the strengths and the pitfalls of such a thing. So the problem with the existing design of residential smoke alarms is that they have a list of things that contribute to them being disabled often. And those things include that they can sound in unnecessary situations. An example would be cooking. In my experience, they'll go off often. They can be obnoxious. The shrill sound that they make can be difficult to ignore and to put up with for a very long time. They're also difficult to turn off. So we all know that smoke rises and that smoke alarms are typically mounted to the ceiling. They have a deactivation. In my experience, they have a deactivation button on them, which in my case, I'm a pretty short person. That means that I have to climb up on something to push that button and turn it off, or jump up on my tippy toes and wave something at it until the smoke dissipates. But we know that working smoke alarms save lives, so that's one of the reasons why I think that we need to attack some of these causal factors that are contributing to people turning them off, so that we can keep them on in as many homes as possible. So there are some things on the market that aim to resolve some of those causal factors, one of them being a smoke alarm that plays a recorded message instead of the shrill noise that smoke alarms traditionally make. That is a potential for my design, and they advertise this as a protection for children, that children are more likely to wake up to the sound of their parent's voice than they are to hear and register the shrill noise of a fire alarm. Some of the shortfalls of those that are already on the market are that they are quite expensive compared to other traditional smoke alarms. They range about $100. And they do not have a method to turn them off quickly. You see this example of a woman up on the ladder. If she had to get up on that ladder to install the smoke alarm, chances are she's going to have to get up on that ladder again to disarm the smoke alarm, which would take quite a bit of time. So my proposed solution is a smoke alarm that could be turned off by a recognized turn-off phrase. So voice recognition software used to recognize a turn-off phrase, and it would stay off for 5 minutes after hearing the turn-off phrase. An exception to that rule would be in an emergency situation. The smoke alarm would be programmed with a second threshold for the smoke concentration that would trigger it in an emergency, a legitimate emergency. So some of the details, potential turn-off phrase could be "I'm cooking," and that would trigger the smoke alarm to be disabled for 5 minutes. That 5-minute time window would be an opportunity to open up windows, open doors, turn on your overhead vent, or do something to rectify the source of the smoke. The second threshold for smoke concentration I discussed would have to be determined through experimentation to find out what a safe and viable second threshold would be. The voice deactivation feature would not be available after the emergency threshold has been breached. So if you're in a situation where you're in that 5-minute window and the smoke concentration were to reach the emergency level, you wouldn't be able to turn it off for a second time using the "I'm cooking" deactivation phrase. An example of why that might be a beneficial feature that I can give from personal experience is that if you imagine a situation in which a person is cooking, they have a smoke alarm go off, they think that it's not a big deal, and then they walk away for a while and then a fire erupts. It can happen quickly, and that's the desired situation in which this not the desired situation, the situation in which this second threshold is designed to rectify. In my example, I had a relative that came over while I was at work and used my oven to cook a brisket. And I was in my first home, had limited cooking ware, and they used a baking sheet to cook the brisket. And so brisket is pretty fatty, and all of the fat from the meat had dripped down into the heating elements at the bottom of the oven. I was unaware until after the fact, but the next morning, whenever I went to go heat up the oven to preheat the oven to make some biscuits, I saw smoke, registered smoke, and thought nothing of it. I thought maybe some food had gotten onto the heating element and it would soon burn off, but the next thing I know, my oven was on fire. And so that was a personal experience that I drew from for reasoning why there would need to be a modified threshold. So potential issues and research development opportunities for this. Some things that would need to be resolved before this design ever went into production would be the technological capabilities of a second threshold. Whether whatever technology is used to recognize smoke concentration and trigger a smoke alarm in our current design could be capable of registering a second threshold. Next is the voice recognition technology. If it would be able to repeatedly catch the turn off phrase over the sound of an alarm going off, and that would also have to be determined through trial and error. The third factor is economical pricing. So whatever it is that this voice deactivated smoke alarm is going for on the market would have to be something that is in the price range that seems reasonable to a customer. So nobody wants to go from buying a $30 smoke alarm to buying a $1,000 smoke alarm. It just doesn't make sense. Another thing is developing that safe second threshold. Like I said, it would have to be developed based off of experimentation, and there's some legal risk to developing a second threshold. If it's advertised that this second threshold is the emergency threshold, then there's potential for lawsuits if it doesn't go off in a situation. The backup threshold does not trigger the smoke alarm to go off in a true emergency. So that's something that would need to be considered before a voice deactivated smoke alarm could go on the market. So that wraps up the pros and cons of a voice deactivated smoke alarm.